All right, joining us now. She's become a friend of the show and in the service, becoming a regular. I mean, so much for it. I mean, at some point, she might be the co-host on the show. As joked about. I speak of Jen Sewell, Southern Illinois head coach, fresh off an NCAA tournament appearance at a conference championship. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Can't complain. It's fall, so it's not 90 degrees there anymore.
That's true. You're fresh off a third conference tournament championship, fourth NCAA tournament appearance in the last 6 seasons, 17, 19, 21, and of course last year, and the most recent one run anyway. Uh, kind of give me your thoughts here on this little run you've had here. You've been on the staff, you've done it all for this program. What was it like for you to be leading a program to the NCAA tournament as the head coach?
I think it's just a real pressure as a privilege moment for us. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better chemistry group. I couldn't have asked for a better talent group, a group full of leadership. So if you're going to step into something and take over for a Hall of Famer, you want to take over at this moment where we were talking about last night, some players who are already there in terms of mentality and chemistry and things like that. So expecting championships. So nothing's really changed on the championship front. The expectations remain, take it to the regional. I think with some recent hires that we've done, we're going to try to figure out how to take that next step, get deep into the regional and try to take it one step further. So
Take me through that run in the postseason, starting with the conference tournament. It was a wild year tournament, wild year in the Valley. You had some ups and downs. You dropped to a 6 seed there, but it was a very close race in the league. You make that run to win the bid, to win the tournament, beat Indiana State. And then you take it over to Salt Lake, give Utah, the national seed, a team that would end up going to the World Series, all you can handle, an 11-9 game, and then Baylor in a one of the more wild regionals you ever seen. Take me through that 2 week process there.
well, I think we were talking before we got on, like we were probably the most dangerous sixth seed in the country out of the conference. It just was one of those moments where we were down. We knew we were down. We knew we had two pitchers, and that was it. That's what we were going in with. And we come out of the Illinois State series, the last series of the conference. We lose every possible way imaginable. We lose a walk off. We lose on a pass ball. We lose on a run rule. We lose. I mean, it just felt like any way we could. We couldn't get a W coming out of there. And I remember leaving that site and I overheard one of our juniors or seniors say, we just got to get home. Like the tournament is waiting for us at home. And I think we knew like we would be okay in that one games a day setting. Everly could get fresh enough to go. But we were already with Everly. We got her out of that Illinois State series pretty early. It didn't really affect fifth or sixth at that point. So we kind of took sixth on the chin, knowing if we could control her pitch count going into next week, we had a shot with her on the mound. And then we just kind of picked our way through the conference tournament, opened with a very dangerous UIC team. I was telling you, we hadn't seen them in the regular season, and before 5 or 6 pitches are thrown, they have a runner on third about to score a run. So we got our adrenaline rush right away in that first game, but we knew we were going to have the crowd, we were going to have the tournament adrenaline and all that. And we work our way through that tournament. I think the big win was probably the Illinois State win to come right off, getting swept by them and then being able to handle them in the semis. And then to get to Indiana State, we were sincerely worried about Indiana State. They had really the three best put together pitching staff, pitchers that we had seen all year, each differing from the other. But I thought it was a game of momentum. And I remember our kids saying when we warmed up on the championship day, even my athletic trainer was like, we're not going to lose. And that's not the feeling that I had. I was like, we could win, we could lose. I don't know what's going on here. Everly had thrown upwards of 400 pitches at that point, and we end up in a run rule. And then from that moment on, it was about getting ready for the selection show and getting Everly and Hockerman where they could at least move their arms. So we were just talking about the Utah game last night. The minute I saw them warm up, I thought they were a World Series team. Very impressed. We had watched all their stuff coming out of the Pac-12 tournament, and I thought Lopez was one of the hottest lefties in the country at that point. And clearly, they had done a great job offensively. They could score a ton of runs. When you score 6 or 8 off UCLA, you know what you're doing. So that got off to a fast start because we got down really fast. But I thought it had been a crazy year, but I thought we trusted ourselves and we got back in that game and then scared the daylights out of them enough to where they had to bring her back in. And somebody turned to me and said, if Baylor does this and takes their number one out, they could be in danger too, which is exactly what happened. And then we got all over them. But it was really, I thought, a moment for our program where we realized, hey, we got to stop just trying to get here. So that's, it's time to shift gears and try to become a late regional participant. And then let's throw out some like scary goals and start talking about put super regional in our vocabulary. So
Oh, and you made a name yourself in that regional. I remember everybody looked at that score, and I remember Kenzie Fowler was doing that regional. Like, this team is not a 4 seed. Okay, there's no way.
yeah.
But like that, and it's interesting because it's nothing new though for your program. And like, what I remember the year you got sent out west before as a 4 seed when we were kind of perplexed that you were a 4 seed there. So I think you gained a lot of respect by the way you play Utah and Baylor because Utah, you mentioned, you were right. They ended up going to the World Series. Baylor was in the mix to host.
Yep.
And it was a team that had beaten Oklahoma and everything. So you pushed those two teams to the point where a lot of people that was the regional everybody was watching to wonder if the upset was going to go down.
Yeah. And I think we were all sitting in that pre-regional meeting and we were looking around and I was like, anybody could win this regional. I mean, at the time, I think Baylor had some injuries. Utah was definitely had the hot hand, I thought. But, I thought, if Everly gets hot right here and we get hot offensively, we're in the mix as well. And Ole Miss had played well through the stretch run. And they can throw a lot of things, a lot of experience at you, a lot of presence on the mound. And I thought it was like sitting there amongst 4 teams who could do whatever they wanted. It was going to shake out, as the games went. Nobody could really say, hey, this is my winner right here sitting in the room.
For the returners, what did you want them to take from that experience, and what have you, if you've noticed that's made a positive impact here this fall?
Yeah, I noticed it immediately because I think when we got put out, you could tell that they wanted more, not just because they wanted to spend more time together, but they felt like they had more. They could go a lot further. And we started talking about it immediately. I mean, we talked about it in the summer programming. We talked about it in this fall. It's absolutely all we've talked about. What is the next step? And with our associate head coach, with our new hire and Katie Griffith, with Key being here, we talk about it. I try to bring it up every day. Okay, so we've done this work and it's got us this far. So what is the next piece of the puzzle in terms of taking the next step? I think part of that is just the psychology of being there, expecting to be there. We've laid out a calendar that goes all the way through the Women's College World Series. So it's time on campus training and an expectation to be here in June. And I think we've looked at the numbers. I mean, we've picked up our technology, picked up our some different ideas from people. Like, this is what teams have to be in a super regional. This is what teams have to be in a regional final. You have to have you have to have 3 hitters that have hit 10 plus home runs. You have to have 2 kids with an ERA sub 1.8. So there's some facts in there that we have to get to figure out how to take that next step. And we've been very open and truthful with kids about that. And I think it's helped us understand, it's not just wishing and hoping, it's doing. You have to execute. And I thought Utah, though, gave us that moment of just how close we really were. And it wasn't this massive gap we had to close. It was the hair that we had to close. So
No, I think that's proven. I mean, if the players need extra motivation, Utah was there in the World Series, and I think some people feel that if Baylor could have been in the World Series with a different draw, so I could argue played 2 quality World Series caliber teams.
Yeah, and I think our team walked off that field and felt the respect of those 2 programs, and I can't say it enough. Just what a joy it was. I've been to some regionals where, as the 4 seed, we've been treated like the trash can that got put out. But at Utah and with Baylor and with Ole Miss, the respect was there instantly. And I know I really appreciated Utah giving us that experience, but not just on the field, but off the field. And then a chance to be with Baylor. You could feel, that's a team that had beaten OU, that had played well against Oklahoma State. So you knew how good they were and how well coached they were. And it was important for our team, I thought, just to not just be in the room, but be in the mix in terms of like, okay, I think in the Baylor game, their center fielder, who I think is one of the best outfielders in the country right now, pulled the ball down at the wall that would have put us ahead by 2 runs. And so when you're that close, you're a warning track catch
Yeah.
away from beating that type of team. I could have seen any of those teams that we were up against, including Ole Miss, onto a super.
San Diego State
Yeah.
it was a team that pushed Utah to, they're in the super regional there as well. I mean, that's another example. I mean, we saw what Grand Canyon did, knocking off
Right.
UCLA, and then Liberty kind of also beat you. So it's more, the gap's narrowed from that standpoint.
Yeah, and we were talking about the McNeese Washington
Yeah.
game. We talked about San Diego State. We were at Pitch Talk this summer, and the one person I wanted to hear from was Stacy Newman about her transition to the pitching coach side, and then her transitioning her team into the super regional. I wanted to hear that story because I thought, you know what, that's a great message for our program as well. I think we're right on that brink if we can hear some of the things. And she talked about it's a vocabulary, it's a psychology. Like you have to not assume that you're going to be there, but you have to talk as if, train as if these are the expectations, not just, hey, we're happy to be here. So
What was it like for you personally? Like, you've had the success when you were right there with Coach Blaylock, but this was your team. This was you're the one that making all the decisions. You're not suggesting decisions like you might with Coach Blaylock. What was that experience like for you? Did it feel different when you win that tournament and you knew you're going to that selection Sunday night? Did it feel different? What was that like for you personally?
Well, I enjoyed it. I think our staff really allowed our program to enjoy it and allowed me to enjoy it, really took care of the details and just the logistical side of it. It was like a deep breath after a really long season. We'd had, a kid that had lost her dad in January and a kid that had lost her, a boyfriend in late May. And we had been through a lot emotionally, and it was like the biggest win to at least get over the hump where we felt like all this chemistry had really benefited us in those moments. So I think just not a relief, but it just felt good for them. And I think as a head coach, I thought, all those years of culture and family and things like that show up in those moments. And then they allow you to transition into like postseason mode where it's going to be into the ultimate pressure. Um, I felt very comfortable. Our staff felt very comfortable there. And I could tell for the first time, I thought, since probably Carrie's 04, 05, 06 teams that went deep into regionals, I could tell that our program felt really comfortable in that moment. And it coming home, I was like, man, we're just right there. So it was like the work that we had done had paid off in the end. And we were one swing, one pitch away. So I was able to just really enjoy them and really sit back in awe of what we were doing, especially offensively. Um, and really to watch somebody like a Maddie Everly throw that many pitches and do that kind of work through a 2 week span. I mean, you're just watching a human just go above and beyond, I mean, it's really like a freak of nature 2 weeks where she's fighting off a stress fracture, she doesn't feel good, and then all of a sudden she's pitching against Baylor. So it was just a really like stand back moment for our staff and just enjoy um, and experience what they were going through.
Well, it's a good segue to talk about this year's team and talk about the pitching staff. You mentioned Maddie Eberly, 19 wins, 3.5. Pretty good year considering what you just described, what she went through. So just talk about her and the rest of the staff, because you had Elliot Stinson last year win 11-3. But what do you expect from your staff? And you just mentioned you got a new pitching coach.
Yeah, I think Maddie is going to be for sure the vocal leader of the bullpen. She's she's healthy. I mean, that's the biggest thing was go home, get healthy. Very specific plan for her to get healthy. So super excited. Got to see her throw finally this fall in that 8th game. Throwing hard, feels good, I can tell, and is very fresh. We have the Hockerman kid and a freshman, Kiana McDowell, coming in, who basically handled all of our fall for us. Really split that and pitch to contact type kids who Hannah put up a 0 ERA this fall, and Kiana never hurt us one time, just threw and hit barrels and got us out of innings. So super impressed. That's just a first year kid coming in with eyes wide open and helping us out. And then obviously the big addition is Maddie Ogroff, the big lefty out of Nebraska. And she's not very big. I shouldn't say big. Her pitches are big, but she's not very big. One of those generational type kids that could throw the ball right down the middle and you're just going to miss it every time. So she got the majority of our number 1 innings. And I mean, we're talking 2Ks an inning. So it's on now. So I'm super excited to have between Maddia and Maddie, and then to add Stinson into that mix, and Hockerman and McDowell. I mean, finally, I felt like we've put a staff together. They can go up, they can go down, they can throw hard, they can throw soft. And I think it's, when we hired Katie, I told her, I said, go to the bullpen, stay in the bullpen, like this is your thing, this is your craft. I'm going to stay out of it. We're going to stay out of it. And I think between Hockerman and McDowell, that's where you saw Katie's influence already. Maddie is a gift, and Maddie is already very well into her collegiate pitching career, but to watch her really work with those 2 kids and get them going this fall, I thought was pretty special. So Stinson's going to be healthy, we think, and it's one of those moments where you start to see with that returning offense and that defense where it's all going to come together. So
Sounds like you like actually the depth you have this year and the firepower, the options you have there that you didn't have last year. Is that accurate?
yeah, especially on the mound. I mean, that was, there was only 3 and that was it. And when Stinson went down, it was difficult to just put it on 2 people. We knew we could score runs and we could stop runs, but that doesn't mean that every pitcher is going to go out there and stay under 100 pitches. So it was difficult. We needed another couple openers. We needed a couple bridge kids, and we knew we had Maddie, who was good for, a start at least and a half a weekend. So now we can sort of puzzle piece weekends together a little bit better, like we were doing in February and March of last year until we lost Stinson. So I'm just excited about the sort of the pieces and how we can work them through just a little bit better. Offensively, I mean, we know what we had. We lost, only a couple kids out of that lineup. But this fall, I probably had 3 or 4 kids that I challenged, hey, now's your time, get in the lineup. And we had a couple kids hit well over 500, hit some homers and slug the ball really well. So, and, that's MJ working with them, Katie working with them. And I wanted the 4 pieces, right? Pitching, hitting, defense, and a run game. And that showed up, 9 for 9 in stolen bases so far. So, I think as we know what teams need to make deep postseason runs, now we're starting to see it show up on paper. So
When I remember we spoke last year, and one of the things you wanted to focus on from the offense was to be more diverse. That
mm-hmm.
hey, let's run more, and that's why as we'll get into with the offense and the coaching staffs, that was part of the reason you made the moves that you did is you wanted more diverse in the offense. Do you feel you were close to accomplish what you wanted last year? Are you where you want to be?
Yeah, I know we were up for sure in stolen bases, and then the run game for sure. We were better just taking bases in general, not just the obvious on paper. I don't know what our stolen bases were up by, but I would say at least 25%. I think that's MJ just establishing her philosophy over there at first base. And then, I think part of it is hitters who run well. Now there's a piece in softball for hitters who run well and hit for power, not just little teeny tiny slappers who put it in the ground and then steal second. So we've looked for a couple of those pieces, and I think we've got them in the younger classes. But I think getting to second base, not just by, like tapping or bunting and then stealing, but now really able to get to first base and then steal a bag or able to hit for big power is both options from the same hitter. So
for those that may not be aware, Mary Jo, you're speaking about Mary Jo Fernbach, the assistant came in last year, has blood in her this school, like
yeah,
is in her blood.
yeah,
And she came in to run, help to run the offense and bring that diversity there.
yeah.
How well did that fit? Like, so you said last year you thought it even fit even like perfectly, like
Yeah,
even quicker than any
right.
coach. Just talk about that instant connection, because now you've got a couple new assistants this year.
Yeah. Well, I think MJ is a player's coach, and she can connect quickly, not just on the skill side, but on the relationship side. So she's also the same one that sees them a lot for player meetings and some other things like academically and things like that. So when they come to her, they're not just getting, hey, here's how to field a ball, run a bag. You're also getting a little life advice and a hug, and that's going to make you feel better when you step on the field, and maybe someone like me, the head coach, is telling you the truth a little too much. So I think she's a feel good type coach, and they want to play for her everywhere she's been. They wanted to play for A&M, UNC, Michigan, Illinois State. When they enjoy her presence, and her skill set. And it's going to be the same thing, I think, with Katie Griffith. Very much so a player's coach, but can still dive very deep into their craft and make players understand why we're doing it. It's not just dictating like, here's how we're going to pitch because I said we pitch this way. Here's some of the things that I can connect you to your pitching with. Now you understand why we're pitching instead of just being a robot and being told this is just what we do here. So I've enjoyed watching both of them, just make players better for sure, but also help them understand why we are doing things. And I think this sort of generation doesn't want to just be a yes no type player. They really want to connect with why they're doing it this way. And it's fun to watch those little breakthroughs that happen throughout the year. So I was just catching a bullpen this morning, and Katie got a kid to really connect with something, and it was like her big win for the day. And then over time, especially in the off season, you're stacking those little wins. And then when you get on the mound or you get to the plate or you get on the bag in February, you feel really good. And you don't feel technical so much or mechanical. You feel good that, hey, when I swing this bat, I'm not going to have to think about it. Or when I throw this pitch, I don't have to think my way through the arm circle or through the changeup. It's going to come out of my hand, and I'm going to trust it.
Mentioned some of the offensive leaders. You had Jackie List last year hitting 356, 17 homers, 57 RBIs, 55 runs scored. There's more stats, but that
Yeah.
would like take up the rest of the podcast. What makes her such an explosive, dynamic player?
I would say just the knowledge of the game and her overall strength. I mean, she's a kid that's in the weight room an extra day a week. She gets it on a different level. She's kind of a coach's dream in that sense. We have a couple of them that are, on Jackie's level. Hamilton's that way, Warwick's that way. I would put Anna Carter up there, and Baker is in that mix. They think a little bit better and faster about the game, and they're sort of anticipating like a coach would. But Liz doesn't have that day off in her. She and not that the other ones do, but Liz just doesn't. We were looking at some heat maps of her today, and I think she had 5 swings and misses or something last year. It's ridiculous. So I mean, that's just you've been gifted, and then on top of your gift, you've gone to work. So I think that's where she gets rewarded. She's she just once in a lifetime. You get to coach, a couple in your career.
Most talented offensive player you ever had?
Yeah, I mean, she's got to be up there. I would have to search through I think in terms of hand-eye coordination, no doubt. I mean, I
Wow, that's big praise.
yeah, and the dedication to what she does. And the fact that we brought her in as a second baseman and she's now playing shortstop, that is her biggest like amazement for me, because you see it a lot with shortstops going to second base or to third base, but you don't see she is a really dang good shortstop. So
That's high praise. You've had some great hitters over there. I'm just saying, that's
yeah,
pretty
no,
good.
she's and the funny part with her aunt being Becky List, who still sits at the top of our many of our leaderboards. We tease her all the time, but I know we text Becky like once a week, hey, she stole another one from you. So she's
Well,
just
that
knocking off your records.
and that is so fascinating because I'm sure when she came in, everybody brought up, hey, are you like, Becky, are you this and that? But now she's making a name for herself,
Yeah.
big time. What was that like? Because you know how this is. Sometimes, player when you have like, a mom or a family relative that was a big time player in that same school, it could be there's like pressure automatically coming in because of that. And they sometimes try to do too much. How did she was able to excel and not, let that all that get to her or any of that stuff?
Well, I think the funniest part about Jackie is she's kind of like this like stone cold killer. Like she doesn't have a lot of emotion to ride on. She's very matter of fact about her training. But if you gave her a challenge like that, I think it was almost like, yeah, I mean, what else would I do besides go wipe out every record my aunt has? I mean, that's just what I'm here for. So it's she's incredible personality, like super funny kid, very dry, but very business, very competitive, and sort of is a mini Becky Liss, I guess, but then takes it to a whole nother level. And I think Becky would admit to you if she were here sitting on this podcast that Jackie is probably more talented than she was. But I think when you grow up around that, like your dad's a baseball player, your grandfather's a baseball player, and then your aunt's Becky Liss, you got to take it to the next level or you're going to hear about it at the family reunion. She's definitely like making sure she's sitting at the top. So
She's got good genes,
yeah,
which probably helps there. And
but she has incredible work ethic. I mean, she loves, and we're getting more and more of these kids, I think, into the sport who are really in love with what goes on outside of the field. And I think some of that is just strength and conditioning and the weight room and all of that. The extracurriculars that used to get set off to the side for players, like, oh, I don't want to be too big or I don't want to be too this or Jackie is like, I think the kid does like 100 push-ups a day. So
wow, that
she's
definitely sounds
all
like a competitive family. I can imagine what she calls her aunt, and there's probably some trash talking going on there.
yeah,
I
and I
don't know.
mean the whole family's athletic. So like
Right.
cousins are playing football somewhere and
Wow.
somebody's in the baseball team, and so it's definitely one of those where the DNA is good, but the work ethic is even better. So
Let's talk about some of the other offensive players. You mentioned Elizabeth Warwick, 385, 19 doubles last season. Riley Hamilton, you mentioned at 341, 6 homers on the season, 44 second team all conference. Carter, second team all catcher, was a great year for her. Emma Austin, 354, had 15 steals. You talked about the speed earlier there. Just talk about some of the other players on the offensive end.
yeah, I mean, you're gonna see, a couple of new additions. I think Rylan Groff, the twin sister of Madia, is gonna see some time. She hit 500, I think, this fall. The usuals are there, like you just mentioned, but Sydney Jones is going to be another one. Led us offensively, I think, in slugging and some other things this year. Had been behind, some other people on the corner. Going to have to figure out how to get her into the lineup. And then Alexis Rudd has really sat for 2 years trying to really refine her stuff and came out and hit over 500 this fall. So there's probably 3 or 4 hitters I would say in there that we've challenged to get onto the field or at least get into the mix and get into the rotation. And although we didn't lose a lot, that's going to help us, when we have some moments where a kid is in maybe a slow streak, we could make that switch, and kind of get going again. But that's what I like about this team. I mean, it's 21. I think anybody can play at any time. There's very few that are not going to see time. You can look through our games played, and there's a role for everybody. But we've got to push. If we're going to the next level, we've got to push, and go up another level. I would like to see us really make an adjustment this year. Our offense is built around on base percentage and slugging percentage, walks, swinging at a really quality pitch. So it always shows up in our walks and our on base percentage, but I'm going to challenge this group to strike out less. So, and that's not always easy when you're working a count late into the game and into the at bat. So I'm going to probably put some numbers in front of some kids this year, like a Hamilton, like a Sidney Jones, a Baker, to keep it cut down and keep the batting average up on balls in play. So
I've noticed that since I've gotten to know you, there's always one or two things you'll pick out
yeah,
and challenge your team to do this. Like last year, like we talked last year, you mentioned, I want to be a better base running team.
yeah,
Not necessarily run more, take some more steals, but also take the extra base when it's
yeah.
there and things like that. How do you come up with that? Is that something you watch tape? Do you watch you look at the stats? How do you come up with, hey, I'm going to pinpoint these two things, like you just mentioned there, to strike out less? How do you pinpoint those things to know, hey, I'm going to press this button because I know the players will respond to that?
Yeah, I think for this year, it's been more like what the DNA of this team, and what we have. I think it will, I think with the pop that we have, any ball that is put in play is going to be hit so hard that I think we could push some kids up into the 370 range, 380 range, if we can just pick up that one more really hard hit. But it's convincing kids, like, some people will become all Americans because they hit two bombs and a dump into right field. I mean, it's it's really going to be about, like, sometimes their batting average on a ball in play is so good that we really can't afford you to go down, striking out. And I mean, probably more, we will strike out looking based on our offense and our philosophy, especially as we're getting to know the strike zone throughout the early parts of the game. But we really should not swing and miss as a strikeout very often. So those are two different pieces of the puzzle for us. But I think each year you kind of push towards what is the DNA of that club and what can they legitimately do as a team. I think probably 5 years ago, we weren't fast enough to push up on the base running. 10 years ago, we didn't have enough pop to operate on the long ball. So, as we add these pieces, and you can ask, consultants now, like, what are the pieces of the puzzle that get you to the next level? They know every team has this DNA, at least three hitters that do this, two hitters that steal this, they're fielding at least 972, those types of things. So I think for us, it's just adding it incrementally so that we can recruit to it, and then we can also sort of take an off season and build towards it.
How do you feel about your defense going in here? Do you feel you have everything pretty much set? Or is there a couple of spots you're kind of curious how it plays out? How do you feel about the defense?
Yeah, I think there's two spots for us. We have to settle down at second base. And we've got some kids that are willing to do that and showed that this fall. And I'm going to challenge our catchers probably. I just was doing a post fall kind of update with our sports information people. And I would say the challenges were, um, good defensively at second base, hold it down at second base. We don't have to hit like crazy out of that position, but we've got to defend like crazy out of that position. And then I challenged our catchers in this fall. Um, I I want to throw more people out. We threw a lot of people out, but I want to throw more people out, period. And then I want to rotate probably two to three catchers instead of one. And that'll put Carter in the DH a little bit more and let her rest. A lot of times it was just Everly and Carter and Hockerman and Carter and Everly and Carter. So I want the other two to get in that mix and throw people out. And we started that from day one this fall. We're going to throw better in that position, and we're going to control the strike zone. And I think we're going to tinker a little bit with making sure that we're turning balls into strikes. So we're really going to track that this year, and pay attention. I want them to be even better receivers, and I think that's been a big focus for our team. We were talking last night. Could we be even better? And that was coming from them, not from the coaching staff. So I'm excited to watch them at those two positions try to be even better with this challenge.
As I talk to you, I cannot be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact I see all these Valley Championship trophies around you. I see a plaque with one of your teams. I don't know which team that is. It's
Yeah, I hope,
on the.
yeah, last year's, I think. So
Is that by design? Did you have a plaque ready for like a team
no,
birthday?
they actually just shipped in, so we were doing a bunch of stuff. I was able to remodel this office a little bit, so I had to take all of Carrie's trophies and find a spot for them.
Well,
So
well done. Because if I was a recruit and I was in your room, I'd be fired up to play right there and seeing all the trophy there, the
yeah,
success.
no, that's the one thing this place needs is a spot for all of Carrie's trophies around here. So we're trying to add to them, but she definitely put the hardware on the map. So
It's looking good. It's looking good. I want to ask you about the Valley. Last year when we talked, it was a new league in a way because of all the new members. It was a larger league, lots of brand first, right? Like the
yeah.
scheduling changes, the conference tournament format, etc. How do you feel it all played out after 1 year, and what do you expect from the league here moving forward, going into year two with this the way it looks?
Yeah, I think I really liked what those new teams brought in. I like especially the locations. I mean, Murray and us are going to always be big rivals to each other. Belmont, I think, we're going to recruit a lot against both of those teams. And I do like the Chicagoland market. I like, we've been recruiting up there. So to have a team up there where we can go and play, I thought, they're going to be a great fit to us. I thought, we were talking before we got on about the top six just being as good as they've ever been. So I think the other ones are going to figure out how to get in that mix. Murray's never going to lay down. Belmont's never going to lay down. UIC's got access to a ton of recruits up there. So, I think as we really get going and understanding also the Friday, Saturday, Sunday series and how that played out, I there were a lot of, like you said, there were a lot of variables thrown into that one season, but I liked it. I thought it made sense to play one game a day. I thought kids were healthier. The league was healthier. Everybody was a little bit fresher coming into the conference tournament, I guess, except for us, but not by design. Um, but yeah, I think you're going to see like the return of UNI. Missouri State's always in it. Illinois State's returning a lot, us, Indiana State. So, and there's always, you know, for Murray State to come in and have a top 3 year, first year in the league, that's how you establish your name. So, you've seen them be very good in the basketball side. So I think that's where they're headed on the softball side. You're going to see a Belmont and a Murray, and the UIC's getting right in the mix. So
As you all stabilize each other, get used to it. I think the goal
yeah,
again, get back to being that multi-bid league like you've been in the past in
yeah.
21 and 19, etc.
Yeah, I think too, it's just learning how to play probably a different type of schedule for some of them than when they were in the OVC, and understanding that first year and then kind of absorbing that new level of RPI into their schedule. And I think this year they'll really have, be in tune with what needs to happen. But I still think the old crew that tends to hang at the top is going to be as fierce as ever. So
Well, it's going to be exciting to once the season gets going. But you are the champ. You're the defending champion. You hopefully you'll get to add more trophies. But I know there's a long ways to go between now and then. Still to go before the start of the season. But always appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I know it's always busy getting the team, but we always enjoy having you. As I've told you, you're now part of the rotation. We had you on during the postseason. Like you're. You're like a de
I
facto
appreciate
co-host from time to time.
it. Hey, whenever. I like this so far, but you never know. You may have to retire and sip a cold drinks with a straw someday on a podcast. So
Could be worse things to be doing, but you got better things to do than that for now. Coach, always a pleasure to talk to you. Like I said, we'll be in touch. Good luck this year, and we look forward to seeing your team get on the
thanks,
field before you know
Thomas.
it.
I appreciate it always.